Starting her up, I'll let you know. Okay, you are on.
What is happening, Facebook family? Hey, Pastor Otto Kelly here, and it's that time again. We're getting ready to get rolling on our Daddy Academy Live and Daddy Academy Hour. Just thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate the comments and the feedback that you're giving us. Continue to pray for us as we believe that we're called to expand and do some more things in regard to coming alongside men and coming alongside families to help them. I really want to thank you guys for, again, supporting and just be a part of what we're doing. We just believe, again, honestly, you guys, this was nothing that we really asked for. It just kind of God just did what he did. And we don't want to get in the way of that. We just want to just allow God to do what he wants to do. So we're getting ready to get rolling. And Khalid's going to kick us in, and then we're going to go live, and then we'll be back to you in a few minutes. So be praying for us, okay? Again, Pastor Otto, and we're getting ready to get rolling, okay? All right. At least a little bit of volume, Khalid.
I'm more volume for you.
We got
I can use some too.
Lynette Bach saying hello online already.
Who's that?
Lynette.
My wife.
Oh, I wonder who that is.
Yeah.
Bless God. Well, bless God, everybody. This is Pastor Otto Kelly here, and we are on our Daddy Academy Hour, and we are here again to come alongside, bless and encourage, help restore men and families. We are of the firm belief that fatherhood is one of those things that needs to be have made attention to and dealt with. And so we're excited about the opportunity that we're getting to come to you across the airways. And we're just excited about tonight's show. We're thrilled. Have a wonderful guest on, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But again, I always got to give a little brief history in regard to why we are the way that we are and why we're doing what we're doing. As most of you know, I'm the Executive Director for Crisis Pregnancy Center here in Reno, Nevada. And it's interesting in that I've been doing this for about 5.5 years, man, coming up on 6 years. And when I first started, I recognized that there was really nothing done for the guys, for the young men that were coming through our doors who desired to be responsible for that baby in their lady's tummy, and they wanted to help. But I noticed that a lot of these guys were coming from homes that they didn't have an example of what a father is and how a father does and what he does. And so we developed a thing called Daddy Academy, and it came out of our Daddy department. And it was amazing to me as we developed this, our Daddy department, young men began to, again, be mentored and began to recognize that they can be, a great dad. And we do several different workshops. I mean, don't get me wrong, we do a lot sometimes, and other times it's just, brothers just sitting around a table and talking about the importance of fatherhood. But what we do is we teach fatherhood and spirituality, fatherhood and communication, fatherhood and culture. And so everything that's necessary to mentor young men to become fathers, that's what we do. Again, I don't like talking about stats and being negative, but, we need to recognize that the majority of our social ills that we see that are in our world today has a direct correlation to fatherlessness. For example, when you have 71% of teen pregnancies, they come from fatherless homes. We have 82% of all men and women that are in juvenile detention facilities come from fatherless homes. You got 82% of all suicides come from fatherless homes. You got close to 61% of all men that are 71% of all men that are incarcerated in adult prison comes from fatherless homes. So more and more you see on a daily basis that fatherlessness is a terrible epidemic that's taking place in our community or in our cities and in our nation. You got 24 million kids right now that are in fatherless homes. You got 240 million kids worldwide in fatherless homes. And so you can tell this is an epidemic. And so this is what we're here just to, again, we don't pretend to know have answers for everybody, but we are here to come alongside and help and do what we can do. All right, so that's why we are here, and we're seeing some positive results as a result of it. So I have to do what I got to do. So I got to open up to my crew here. Well, we have the unfortunate absence of Dr. Stacy Mellum tonight. I don't know where he's at. What did he say he was doing? Y'all have any clue? I don't know, but he ain't here. So
partying somewhere.
Yeah, I know, man. So we're gonna show him love, though. We're gonna show him respect. We got the award-winning soulful voice of Khalid McClure in the house. Like I said before, man.
You just gotta be like Khalid.
You can't do it, man. I know. I'm sorry. Don't try, man.
We do it every week.
One of a kind.
It just doesn't get old to me. Maybe it's bad.
Marvin Gaye and Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman. That's what it is. Marvin Gaye and Morgan Freeman up in this piece, man. I'm serious. Like I said, if I
like the jealousy,
dude, I'm telling you, it is. I'm telling you, man. If I could take that boy's voice and put it in a pillow, I'm sleep, baby. You feeling me? I'm sleep. I'm out, man. I ain't gotta count no sheep, nothing. I ain't got to take no kind of medication to go to sleep, man. I'm just saying. So, Khalid, man, say something special. Hook us up.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks.
See, that's it right there. It was a good evening. What's going on? I'm sorry, man.
Hey, it's just another day. Blessed to be here. Thanks so much for tuning in. As I always say, it's a blessing and an honor for me to be here to absorb some of the good stuff that you guys out there are listening to. I can absorb it as well and apply it in my life. I just thank God for the opportunity. I'm thankful for my pastor being here and leading us in this journey of growth for all of us, and hopefully it's impacting your life as well. I just give God the glory, and hopefully you guys can absorb something as well.
Well, do me a favor, man. Just give a nice welcome to our Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters out there. Just let them know we love them and that we're here for them as well, man. Just give them a little welcome.
Sí, bienvenido todos que están escuchando. Veniste a un lugar de un grupo que estamos hablando de amor, especialmente esta noche de tus niños, tus niñas. Ayúdanos a crecer en la palabra de Dios con toda confianza. Pero si quieres escuchar esta noche con nosotros, mientras estamos hablando, pero no tengas miedo, se puede llamar. El número aquí es 775-829-1550. Gracias por escuchar.
My brother. Appreciate that. My Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters, man, we got your back as well. So just let you know that we love you guys. We're praying for you, and we're here for you. Mike, give us a welcome, man. I mean, are you warmed up yet?
Well, we're not there yet, but we're working on it.
The engine is starting, man.
I'm slow to start.
Mike takes a minute. You take a minute.
So welcome to everybody.
Chevy.
I'm here. I'm in Otto's Facebook page. We're hoping that you guys will join us, comment, and just shout out. So if you've got something to say, if you've got questions, if you can call in like my brother here just gave it in Spanish. It's in English. It's 775-829-1550.
There you go.
So, but you can throw it out there on the Facebook page, and we will try to get it on the air.
Right. Well, you know what, you guys, we are blessed tonight. So you know us. We like to jump right into it. So tonight we have a good, wonderful, special friend of ours. This is Pastor Joey Bach, and this brother got a testimony. I mean, I don't know, man. You'll feel me when he's able to kind of just talk a little bit about his life and that kind of stuff. So I don't know, Joey Bach, tell us about you. Welcome, man, and give us a little history on you, bro.
Good evening. I try to do a Khalid.
You're trying. I'm telling you, man. But dude, you sound like you was hosting Masterpiece Theater.
It's like Bela Lugosi a little more than something.
Yeah. That works. So I work.
Masterpiece Theater.
Let's go to our British accents.
I'm serious, man.
Thank you, Pastor Otto. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you guys having me on. And,
man, great.
Just to shine the light on Jesus a little bit and to deal with the issue of fatherlessness. I'm always floored every time I hear those statistics. But I'm My name is Joey Bach. I'm the associate pastor at Faith Alive Christian Center right here in Reno. Matter of fact, I could almost throw a rock and hit it.
You can.
Almost.
You can. And if anybody could, it's Khalid, man.
You got
the athletic, you got everything, man.
Yeah,
brother blessed. He's butter, straight butter.
But I've been in Reno since 1996. I've been on staff at Faith Alive since 1997. With Pastor David Oberg, my senior pastor.
Pastor D.
And I have a wonderful family. I have my beautiful wife, Lynette, who's watching tonight.
Hey, Lynette.
Hi, Lynette.
Sister.
And 3 daughters, age, I hope I get this right, 25, 24, and 19, soon to be 20.
Awesome.
Kayla, Caitlin, and Camille. And just love Reno. I'm a Texas transplant. You know how Texans are. We're kind of notorious about our state, you know.
So is it the Cowboys or?
We don't even want to talk about it.
I'm just asking. I'm just curious. Man, come on, I'm a Lions fan, man. That's what I'm saying. So everybody know, man, I'm in trouble.
Same boat as you,
No, I'm serious. Well, at least, you can talk about Super Bowls, man.
Yeah, well,
I have to talk about second quarters. I said the Lions had a great second quarter, man. And other than that, man, I'm sorry, man. Go ahead.
We had to go back a little bit in history to talk about Super Bowls too, but yeah, Texas transplant from the Houston area, and I love Reno. I love what God's doing here. I love this community. Love being able to serve and be in the ministry. And I tell my pastor all the time, we kind of joke about it, but it's true. Getting to live your dream. It's amazing to be able to wake up every day, and I have to remind myself of that, just like anyone. But to be able to do that's a pretty amazing thing.
Awesome.
Amen.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking earlier today, man, and one of the things that we really want to kind of dive into tonight, we're going to talk about daughters. We talk about I've got a lot of spiritual daughters out there. I really do. God, saw fit not to bless me with any biological daughters, but just being a pastor, there's a lot of young ladies and a lot of sisters out there that we have the opportunity to pray for and just come alongside and encourage. But Joey just mentioned he has 3 daughters, and brother, you the man, because I'm telling you, man, you're the man. The topic tonight, you guys, we're going to be talking about how do you raise confident daughters. How do you raise confident daughters? And the reason why I want to talk about this particular question is that unfortunately, because of the increase and the epidemic of fatherlessness, there is a propensity for some young ladies to be taken advantage of as a result of not having a strong father figure growing up. I mean, I don't even want to even talk about the numbers from a trafficking standpoint that's taking place in our own city, and I don't even want to talk about it from a West Coast standpoint. But I before I was really into the ministry, I was with juvenile services for a long time, and some of the guys, we had some conversations, and they would tell me, hey, straight out, man, not every female's pimpable. And I said, what you mean? He said, well, if dad ain't doing their job, then I know I got me one. So you know what I'm saying? So Jojo, I just wanted to kind of like talk about that for a bit. What is it that you as a dad are able to impart to your wonderful, lovely daughters to have them have a confident demeanor about them, to know what to look for in a good man?
I'll be the first one to admit and be transparent that,
come on now.
We made some mistakes along the way and don't have it all figured out. But, thank God for mercy and His grace and for teaching me how to be a dad, because I didn't have the best example, parenthood, growing up. But I think the key thing, it comes back to number one, love. I mean, that's got to be the foundation. And I recognize that even early on, I saw you turn to 1 Peter. It's funny because that's one of the verses I was thinking about before tonight. How love covers a multitude of sins in 1 Peter 4. Yeah. And the amazing thing in that is, the God definition of love is obviously very different than what the world has. The world is so fickle and it's subject to change, but the God kind of love is it's sacrificial, it's giving, it always thinks of others first. Right. All those definitions we see in 1 Corinthians 13 are really first and foremost the nature of who God is. Right. And then we can learn to apply that ourselves, but really it describes the Father towards us. And so I think the ultimate example for me is just really basing everything that I did on that. Because if love really covers a multitude of sins, and if you break that verse down and think about what it's saying, love, literally, when it says multitude, it says, I think it even says in the King James, it says the multitude.
Yeah, it does say the.
Yeah, not even the multitude.
That's good.
And so love really always makes up for all the marks we miss. And I think coming back, if I can simplify it, I know we're going to talk about it a lot more, but always feeling like that I had probably, like a lot of dads, feel like I had really missed it with my kids. And I always looked at my shortcomings and the things I could have done better. But it always came back around to love. And if my daughters could be here tonight, I know I could speak for them in saying that. As a matter of fact, I spoke to one of them before this. It was funny because she said, confidence with girls, it's kind of like an oxymoron, right? You know. But having said that, but I think about, if I'm being transparent with myself and with you, all the marks that I did miss is covered with love. And so that's the primary thing. And I think that's really a lot of the missing ingredient when it comes to the fatherlessness, is the fact that the father can be in the home, but there may not be genuine love that's there, the sacrificial love. Willing to lay aside self and to really put yourself on the altar for your kids, and just to be there for them. So, having said that, I know one of the keys for me is to always make sure that was the foundation of every decision that I made. And I know I'm preaching to the choir.
No.
Especially
Keep talking. No. This is good. Just,
But I remember when I first got born again and seeing some Christian families, and not to be judgmental, but the Bible tells us to pay attention, to look at some things. And I remember seeing some fathers and the way that they were treating their children in the church even. I recognized that they were already driving a wedge and creating a fatherless environment, even though they had the connection to the father. Yet they were probably just repeating that same pattern that they had learned from their fathers, which all of us do at some point. But I think a key thing was recognizing early on that I didn't want to fall into the trap of becoming like my father on the negative side, some of the things that he just saw maybe his dad do, and choosing to always walk in love towards him. So that was the first and primary thing for me.
It's interesting. There was a question and a survey given, and I think it was called. It's a website, I believe, you guys, don't quote me on it, but I believe it's called fatherlessdaughters.com. And they had posed a question to young ladies who are in their mid-20s and some in their 30s. They asked them, they said, what are the 4 things that you wish you had from a father if you had him growing up? Those 4 things that they said. They said, number 1, they said, provision, if our father was there to provide for us. 2, they said presence. And 3, they said praise, and it was what got me about the praise part is that they were saying that, if I could just have him affirm me, have him, have what was the word, significance and validation, and so it was that praise part. And I want to stick on there, and we're going to talk about the other 3. But that praise part is the thing that got me, is because that was some of the things that I was hearing guys tell me that they were able to seduce young ladies in, where they would encourage them in certain areas where they felt they were insecure in. And they were able to utilize that. About several months ago, we had Melissa Holland on. You guys know she's the executive director of Awaken, and they help young ladies that were caught up in trafficking. And that was some of the things that she had mentioned, that some of these guys would utilize their desire to be accepted and their desire to have significance. And they would use it from a standpoint of like, no, you girl, I'm there for you. Come on, now you know better than that. And so anyway, I say all that to say that I don't know, Joy. I guess what I'm asking, I know that love covers that, and it really does. But what is it that you think, from a standpoint, needs to be presented to our young ladies to help them recognize, false praise, to get something from them? that they wouldn't otherwise be willing to give? What is it? How can we help them distinguish between someone who really is after their good or after what they can get from them?
Yeah. I think obviously the easy answer is our responsibility as fathers just to teach them the difference. But it's usually a lot more complicated than that.
Sure.
I do recognize even in my life, one of the things, and this is something that was a pattern in my relationship with my father, which I do have to say, I told you I was going to clarify this before we really got too deep into it. My father was a wonderful man. My father got born again later in life, and God really healed our relationship in so many ways. And there's probably some people watching, family members and friends too, that in talking about issues that we have with, I think everybody at some point probably has some kind of a daddy issue that we're working through.
Come on.
And a lot of us think that we really deserve the fairy tale and we didn't get it, whatever we worked that up in our minds. But, I've said this before, how any issue that I think I did or that I did have or whatever I thought I had, the fact that my father's not here anymore and that I can't just pick up the phone and call him, it doesn't really matter that much now. So whatever I had in my head. But in saying that, I guess, we tend to end up doing, whether we recognize it or not, what our fathers do. And one of the shortcomings I think that my father had was the fact that he could never really, for whatever reason, he couldn't give me praise. And of course, when you're young, you don't realize how much you need it until you start being analytical later and thinking about some of the things that really motivate you in what you do. And I say that because I found myself falling into that same pattern as a young father. I think if we're, the hardest question to ask ourselves sometimes is, to look in the mirror and say, what kind of a man am I? And I did early on start to recognize some of those things I was doing with my own kids. I wasn't giving them the praise that they deserved when they were doing well. And, of course, that's a nice drawing or whatever, but I really couldn't figure it out why I would hold that back. I knew that I was supposed to say it, but I wouldn't do it. And, of course, years later and really, putting thought to that, it's because I never had that example when I was a young man. Even at my dad's memorial service, I'm sitting next to my stepmother and, the pastor said, and your dad was so proud of you. And I just lost it because that was one thing that made me break because I would hear that from others, but I would never hear it from him. He never could approach me for whatever reason and say, I'm so proud of you for what you're doing. So I think that is so key, Pastor Otto, when it comes to that confidence, because if we have somebody in our corner, because we're a representation of God on the earth to our kids before anyone. We've heard that before, but it's so true. We represent the Father God to our children. And if we're not giving them the things that is tangible, Jesus with flesh on, they're going to fall into that pattern of a lack of confidence. So I think, you hit it directly with those four things, praise and, praising your kids for when they're doing right and not just when they're missing the mark is so key to instilling confidence in them.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Jump in, you guys.
I was going to say...
will you ask everybody how we're doing on volume? Because a couple times...
We got
okay?
One guy, Mr. Billy Boy, said our volume was pretty good.
Okay,
if anybody else out there has a comment, please shout it out or just type it in.
Yeah, type it in. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
The question I was going to say was, or a statement, is I think in my life, the one thing I noticed a lot was that the lack of affirmation and not doing that in my life, and even though you recognize that you want to do that, you don't feel comfortable with it because it wasn't modeled, and so now when you do it, you have to kind of even learn how to do it, what works, what doesn't work. It doesn't come naturally to you. You have to actually put it on and then figure out, and there's like you said, the confidence, the confidence of how to even do that. It at first, especially, and even still, I struggle with, I want to affirm people, and I work with the Pathfinder kids and stuff on Fridays, and I love those kids, right? And they're just fun to be around and all that stuff, and a lot of stuff comes natural, just hugging them and stuff, but being able to really speak into their lives and know and with a confidence that it's going to sink in or whatever, that's still not something that I would say is natural to me. I want to do it, I try to do it, but it's when you let it flow, a lot of times it works fine, that type of thing, and maybe just kind of hanging with them is all they need, but I you really want to convey to them their value. You feel that, especially when you come from a place where I did, where the value wasn't conveyed, and I don't think my dad ever felt like he didn't love me or whatever. I don't think that was the case. I think that he just didn't have it, like you said, from father to father. He didn't really have it conveyed to him either, or how to do it, or whatever was in the way, those different things. I don't think it was a heart. I don't think it was from the heart necessarily, although there was definitely disconnects in his heart about how to do family. But I don't believe that it was something that he had a lot of control over in a lot of ways either. But it definitely passes down, and breaking that chain and being able to start showing that, especially if you have your own children, and hopefully that you as they're raising them, you're doing it and they're used to it and stuff or whatever. But it's just one of those things that seems so important.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't have daughters, like I said, biological daughters, but one of the things I think really helped me with my sons was that the willingness to let them know that I didn't have it all together.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to be a great dad to you guys, but I need your help. You know what I mean? If I'm missing some things, or if I'm falling short of some things, could you let me know?
Right.
And it really helped me, because my sons developed a relationship with me to where they were honest. They could say, okay, they would just tell me the truth, and then I would find myself really appreciating them, because our relationship grew as a result of them having confidence, knowing that they could talk to me about anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it goes back. Yeah, it goes back to what Pastor Joy said in regard to relationship with your Heavenly Father. It's like I know I can tell him anything. If the things I don't understand, I really want to pursue them and find out how what's working, what's going on, and so I that confidence in that developed in such a way to where we talk about anything, but what I guess that what I was alluding to is that I found and Mike, I think you can do this too. I found again, and this is another thing that I mentioned before, but I found myself again vicariously fathering myself when I'm fathering my kids. In other words, it's like the things that were absent in you. You have the ability to actually father yourself through those kids, because it's wonderfully therapeutic. It really truly is. I think to myself, okay, what is the kind of dad that I would like to have? And then I live that out in my sons, and I found out that I'm doing the same thing for me. Now, I don't know how that works, but it freaking works, man. I don't know how it works. Yeah. But I think it's just being intentional, because it's unbelievably healing. It really, I don't know how it works, Khalid, but it's freaking unbelievably healing, man.
I think it's true. We think about that saying that it feels better to give than to receive, and in relationship to tangible physical gifts and even just more things as well. In that same way, when you're in that situation, you have your children, even while you may not have been given the quote-unquote specific tools that you think you deserve, that you needed, when you're going through the motions and you're talking to your kids, you're letting them know, you're setting the scene that, you're not perfect, but you love your children enough to say, I'm going to work through this because I love you, and I want you to have even what I missed, even what I don't have, even what I don't know or quite understand how to give. We're going to do this. And in that process, there's a satisfaction, there's a renewing of yourself. When you do that, it gives you the ability to kind of forget about, what's that monkey on your back, what I'm saying, that feeling of regret or whatever it is that you have, that negativity, that you're really eyeing that what I don't have. you're focused more on, hey, I've got this opportunity to do this for my kids, and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And they're smiling and they're enjoying it, because when we talk about being able to instill confidence in kids, it's so huge. So huge. It's not just, while it's huge, when you talk about sex trafficking and the impact and what leads them down that road, like you said, hey, if the fathers aren't going to do it, I can provide something that's going to bridge that gap, and I'm going to get what I need from them. In the same way, it's going to extend in every part of their life. Yeah. Whether it's school, sports, it all stacks up on top of each other, and so it's so important.
I was going to ask you, Pastor Joe, when we've had an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about you growing up and whatnot, and it's it's not a very happy scene in some areas. And you said that your relationship with your pops was kind of like what happened? In other words, I mean, you can get as vivid as you'd like to get, but
Sure.
What happened from a standpoint of like, man, from doing them things that you did, and I'll let you indulge or reveal what you want to reveal, but what happened? I mean, because if you don't mind, if you don't mind, just kind of
Sure.
sharing that, and what got you to the place where you're at now, to where you have a great
Absolutely.
relationship with your daughters and
I
your
did
wife.
want to say, we don't want to over spiritualize things, but everything's spiritual.
Everything.
You said intention, and that's something that I had on my heart I was going to say before I actually was thinking about it as you said it. That intentionality is so important. I know everybody likes that's a buzzword now, but it's so true, because unless you intend to do so, I'm a terrible procrastinator. It's one of my faults that I really have to stay on top of, because I intend to do well, but I don't. And just being in the moment and recognizing that all of us can do something. As a dad, I just put this into practice, and you get results.
Yeah.
Things do work, but it's really taking the time to do it. I think is huge. But I grew up in a typical dysfunctional environment. Is it okay to quote Nietzsche on a Christian radio show?
I think so. I
think it was
we
Nietzsche
just
who
we
said
just a
that.
show, man. I mean, it comes out the way it comes out.
He
You feel
said
me?
like every family is dysfunctional in their own way or whatever. I think it was him. But anyway, my parents divorced when I was pretty young, and they got married young and had kids, and so I went to live with my mother, like a lot of kids do, and my stepdad. So there was already the beginnings of an absentee father that was there, and it was not his fault. It was just the circumstances that was dealt him, But the environment was, it was a decently stable home life, but there was a lot of things under the surface that just were not okay. And not to make it a longer story, but when I was 7 years old, late one night, my stepbrother got into a fight with my stepdad, and it got so heated and bad that my mother recognized that it was really serious, and she sent my sister and I and some other friends that were there with them out of the house. This was late at night, and my stepbrother ended up he murdered my mother and my stepdad both, and so. Even besides all the...
You were 7 years old?
7 years old, yeah. And it's amazing circumstances like that. I can almost remember every detail of that night. And of course, being that age, you don't realize what kind of loss that is, because you're young and innocent and tender, And so went to live with my grandparents. I do remember they gave me the choice, and I was really close to my grandfather. He was a wonderful man, a mountain of a man. And my grandmother was a wonderful, godly woman, so it was really a God thing that I was sent to live with them.
Just real quick,
yes.
Was there any, how like when you're that age and something happens to parents or someone close to you, was there a string of blame? In other words, self-blame, that it's your fault that this kind of stuff happened? Was there anything like that going on with you?
One member of the family there was, and it's a whole other segment of the story of my stepsister ended up taking her life just this past year, and it goes all the way back to that. And it was literally that. It was the blame of, And the crazy thing is, if we can fast forward, I'll just tell you what happened. Years ago, I was told that, I don't remember if she was in a car accident, but she was hospitalized and really just lost it and was screaming my name in the hospital. And it goes back to the guilt of that moment. And the story was, and I didn't know that she was the one that had told on him for whatever he had did, and this fight broke out and ended up being this, this double murder. So it's amazing that it didn't necessarily happen with me, but it was definitely part of the story. How we can affix those kind of things to someone's sickness to ourselves, But went to live with my grandparents, and my grandmother would just love Jesus, good Baptist woman, put the word in me, used to probably prophesied like it's, the Bible talks about how the priest prophesied about Jesus and he knew it not. She told me I was going to preach the gospel one day, I got pictures of me as a little boy holding the Bible.
You got that big old gigantic concordance.
Oh yeah, with a big old head boy too, so. But spent about 6 or 7 years living with them. And my grandmother died, and I ended up moving back and living with my dad. And, my father was dealing with his own issues. He was, in another marriage that was really rocky. And pretty much from that age up until my teenage years, again, father was a wonderful man. There's many people, I love him, I miss him dearly. He became an amazing man of God after he got born again. But because of the issues he was dealing with, was really focused more on his relationship with his wife. And so there was a lot of things that I needed, especially considering the trauma that I'd been through, that I just didn't get. Plus, it was a really rocky marriage, and we went through just major ups and downs, and, from being locked out of the house and having to go to friends' houses. It was just the typical drama that comes with, in a bad relationship. And through all of that, the amazing thing is when I look back and think about the things that were really affirmations for me, and that is so huge. I didn't realize how important it was until later. I became a dad. My grandfather and my grandmother both, like I said, my grandmother is speaking the word over me. My grandfather treating me like a man, even as a young boy, would treat me like a man and talk to me like a man, and in a good way, and encourage me. Those are all things that were seeds that would come to pass later, and was really my best example as a father later in life. It's funny, I really look like my grandfather a lot. But all the trauma and all the tragedy of that all wrapped up in coming back into the relationship with my dad and not having those things that I needed really began to brew into something that caused me to launch into just a terrible terrible set of circumstances as a young man that brought me to my knees, my salvation. But I can look back and I can see that it wasn't even necessarily the tragedy of that moment that night, because that is, for people to have to walk through something like that, it's terrible. But the fix would have been, and the amazing thing is, there's people that can walk through those things, but if they have an example of a father, just like now we have this great example of the Father God, and we can be affirmed through His Word and see what a good father looks like. All that could have been different. And again, it's not to blame my dad, because he was living in his own, world of drama. But all those things could be fixed by just the presence of the Father in someone's life. And that was the thing, I think, that would have been maybe the saving grace, but that was lacking. And I have some other examples in that too. But, like I said, does it all matter now? Well, it's a story, and it is significant. But I can't pick up the phone and call him and tell him how much I love him, and really have that relationship now. So age, I guess, and time really does heal a lot of things.
Yeah.
You get some perspective.
Amazing. So from that point, and let's bring it to the present. Your daughters are born, and you're raising them up. What were some of the experiences that you're able to use as a father, growing up in some of the hostile environments that you witnessed? What were some of the things that you were able to take from that and then apply it to raising confident daughters?
I think, like you were saying too, I recognized early on the things that I was missing. I don't know if it's just part of my nature. I'm very analytical. When I start thinking about, because I really immediately had a love for the Word of God, and so there was things that I recognized in there that I didn't have, but I could have, and so like a lot of kids do, and adults later, you think about the things, and you think about your own father and the examples that you have, and you start to compare that with this good father that we're all of a sudden thrust into this relationship with. It was really hard for me initially to understand the love of the Father because I didn't have that from my own dad, and I didn't feel like I was getting that from him.
Now let's jump in that, Mike, because I want you guys to interject. And I don't mind speaking for Mike. I don't know if I'm speaking for you, but that's in the area that Mike, has admitted that there's areas that he has some problems with in regard to a father and sometimes not feeling that love.
Yeah.
I guess the question I'm asking is, how were you able to? And I'm going to have Mike kind of jump in and talk about some of this stuff. But how were you able to transfer that lack of father, and then be able to dive into this word and then actually believe what he's saying about you in regard to being a good father? I mean, God's saying that he's a good father.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, there was a moment that happened for me that I started to recognize. We come into Christianity and our spirit man has changed forever. Mm-hmm. Thank God that He redeems us, but this thing,
the cranium,
all the baggage we can bring into that relationship. When I was first born again, the first about 2 years of my relationship with God, I kept a prayer journal, and I prayed for my family members to all have the same experience I did. One of them to come into the kingdom. Still have that journal today. Amazingly, God answered those prayers. So many of my family members got saved. It just, amazingly, lives transformed. But I'd, been very nobly praying for my dad as well. And one night, I missed church, like Thomas. Thomas missed church one time, and he missed out on a great blessing, and then they call him Doubting Thomas because of it.
Just one time.
Just one. Yeah, missed one service, man. You're done. No, it's not. But I got a phone call one night. I was standing in my garage when we lived in Texas, and it was my dad on the phone, and he was choked up and couldn't even speak. And immediately, of course, your mind thinks, "Oh my gosh, somebody died. Something terrible was wrong." And he finally got out, "I got saved tonight." He had went to church without me, to my church of all church. He goes to my church, and I'm not there.
The night you didn't go.
Yeah, the night I didn't go.
Come on, Thomas.
Yeah, and get saved, and I could tell on the other end of the line. I mean, this was something that
this
was
is
genuine.
authentic. It's real.
So here it is. I'm in this moment where God answers my prayers. And of course, there's probably a lot of other people praying for him too, but God answers my prayer, the heart cry. God saved my dad. And immediately, I was so angry, Pastor Otto. I was furious. It was all of a sudden like I couldn't even hardly say, "That's great," on the other end of the phone. There was something in me that just could not celebrate with him. And what it was, after thinking about it later, in some twisted way, as long as he was on the outside and he was an unbeliever, then it was a very noble thing. Like he's out here and I can pray for him. But now all of a sudden he's drawn close. Now he's not just my dad, he's my brother. And I know what the word said. I knew a little bit of the word. I didn't realize that we just have to love people unconditionally. Love is love, But we're supposed to love the sinner, we're supposed to love the saint, But in my mind at the time, that's what I was thinking. And I guess I said all that to say this. It exposed something on the inside of me that I recognized that I didn't have. Because like I said, I'm very analytical. I'm going to start thinking about, why am I feeling this way? What does the word say? What do I need to do here? And so when I started analyzing why I felt that way, I had enough sense to know that I really should apply what Scripture says. And again, this was a part of the mind renewal, something I needed to change in. And this was actually before my kids were born. Thank God. So what I recognized is there were some things in me that I knew that, to be a good father, that I couldn't let this stay in this relationship with him. And it really wasn't until my daughter was born that I started to recognize the love of the Father. That moment they hand you that baby, and that was it for me. For somebody else it can be something different, but for me, when my firstborn Kayla, who's listening right now, when they handed me that little baby, and I started to understand, and it was in that moment, thinking about how I felt about this life, this spark of life that was in front of me, that's been entrusted to me, the responsibility of that. And I think that's what's so key about shows like this is, it's not to put a heavy burden on someone, because with this it's easy. When we apply these principles, it really is. Love is easy. The way of the unrighteous is hard. It's not this. And so I at least recognized enough to know that I didn't have the answers, because I was a mess inside, even though I was different. And so I, at that moment, made that decision to start working towards becoming like this Father. And that made the biggest difference. That was the transitional moment. Now, the practicality of that, is a whole different story.
That's different.
But that was the moment that I really recognized it, where I knew that there had to be a change. And again, not to overuse some word, but it was intentional. I started making the choice to apply these principles. And we were joking about this beforehand. It takes some discipline. It just takes some doing. You have to put the work in, to put the time in. And, to have daughters now where they'd be the first to admit they don't have it all figured out. They lack confidence in certain areas. But I think one of the things, if I can speak for them, and you guys are welcome to call in tonight, by the way.
Call in, girls.
Yeah, go ahead, call in. But one of the things they would say that they know is that, I really believe this, is that I've always tried to broadcast the heart of the Father towards them. And not just, the cleaver picture of a dad, but just what the Word says. And always coming back to that. And that, to me, is probably the greatest thing that will bring confidence, even when there's struggles later in life, because they've had their own struggles and dealt with some negative relationships or whatever, but they eventually would come back around to the example. And that's a heavy responsibility. But, it's easier now that I'm on the other side of it, because I love, like you, I watch you with your boys. I've seen you with them, and how they respond to you, and I can see fatherhood in that. You'd be the first to admit you don't have it figured out. You made mistakes, but I can see the result of the years that you put in, and really what you poured into them, because now it shows up in their relationship with you as adults. And I think that's the thing. As long as there's always grace and love and mercy that's been mixed in and on top of all that, then the lack of us understanding sometimes how to navigate that as fathers, it pays off in dividends, because the choice was always love and mercy. My only regret as a dad, and I say this to everybody that I talk to that ever ask anything, my only regret as a father is that I did not show my kids more grace. I wish that I would have understood earlier on how important it was for me to always go to grace rather than just the authority figure. And not that I was a tyrant, but grace is not going to hurt anyone. It's Jesus. And so that's a little bit of my take on that.
That's great, man. I'm leaving it open. What y'all got, man?
Well, you got a comment, a question from Antoinette Richardson.
My niece.
That's what I thought, yes. So it says, not sure if your girls are married, but do you find that women marry their fathers per se, even if their father is abusive?
That would be my niece. She would ask something. Well, my niece in Brooklyn, right? She's from Brooklyn. I know. I can't. Sometimes I don't know if it's the Bronx or Brooklyn. So you just please forgive me if I'm jacking stuff
Where
up.
Is it,
both are wonderful bastions of hip hop.
Okay, yes it is.
I'm just saying.
That's it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I'm sorry. So that's to you, Pastor JoJo.
It's. I know my girls are listening, so. It's really. Is it prideful to say I just wish they would pick somebody like me?
I'm leaving that one alone too.
No, I think it does happen. I think I'm on both sides of that. We tend to look at whatever we had or whatever we lacked in, and I think human nature is to gravitate towards the negative. Without the confines of really understanding, mind renewal and really living for Jesus. But that being said, I mean, Pastor Otto, how many times have you talked to someone that in counseling, sometimes even you wish you could just get to the point, and, it's amazing when God will reveal something immediately, and you say, well, let's just get to this, because I really believe this is what's going on.
Right.
But I don't think you can beat that dead horse, or whatever the saying is, enough when it comes to that issue of fatherlessness, even if they're in the home, the lack of it. Whether they saw their dad in a very abusive relationship, maybe with their own mother, and they follow that same pattern and end up marrying the same guy or dating the same guy over and over again. I think absolutely that happens. But there's still that responsibility that comes with adulthood, where I don't think they're going to necessarily do that. What they're looking for sometimes is, skewed by their own natural desires rather than going back to what God intended for them. I don't say that to release any responsibility from the dad, because obviously are some dads who really have done an amazing jobs, and their kids still go astray. And that, it's human nature for us to tend to look to the simplest answers.
Sure.
Yeah.
And things can be a whole lot more complicated.
Yeah.
There's so many things that come into play that in a relationship. Our nature wants to say, this is it. And even in blaming ourselves sometimes, it must have been me. But that being said, Antoinette, is that her name?
Yeah.
Antoinette, I do believe that there is definitely an influence that happens. And a lot of times we look into for whatever we're lacking or whatever we had abundance of. I think it's on both sides of that coin. And so it's still personal responsibility.
And I think
So we got,
go ahead. Well,
first of all, very important fact, Brooklyn.
I'm not bad.
Brooklyn.
Antoinette says Brooklyn.
Okay.
So, and then Kayla did comment.
Oh,
So let
my
me read
oldest
Kayla's
daughter.
comment. She said she couldn't comment because she's not Facebook. She used your wife's, I think, is what the deal was. So she said, my dad and I have talked a lot about the difference between security and peace. That goes a long way with looking for praise from others, not just men. Security is fleeting, trying to grab hold to anything that makes you feel better in that moment. Peace and confidence comes at all times within yourself, imparted by Jesus, even when the storm is blowing.
yes.
Come on.
Yeah.
Amen.
How come you didn't just come on the show?
I tried to tell her.
Come
I tried
on,
to tell her,
Caleb.
Pastor Ryan.
Thanks, Kayla. Appreciate
That was
that.
awesome. That was absolutely awesome. I'm shutting up. This is good. Keep going. I'm gonna spectate. This is too good. Keep going. Keep going, Pastor Jojo. This is on.
Khalid looks like he had something.
No, I was going to say that right on
great.
what you guys were saying. When somebody grows up, they tend to follow the trend of life, whatever they're being taught, good, bad, indifferent. And I think that when we think about like water takes the path of least resistance, when we go through a period of life, we grab a hold of what's good, what's bad, and sometimes if there's some bad characteristics or bad habits, we take that in as kind of a normality. Things that this is how life is. This is how my dad was. This is how my mother was. This is normal to me. Whether it's good for you or not. Sometimes I think people recognize that as a security blanket. This is what I'm used to. This is what's normal. So and people hear it all the time. When a person that's been through a lot of rough patches in life and they find that one good guy, or the good girl, whatever you want to call it, and they can't settle in with that. It's not comfortable for them. It doesn't work. It doesn't feel to work. It seemed to work in the beginning, but I think it's because of that learned baggage that they've come through that period of growing up through childhood and adolescence. But like you said, this is a responsibility we take as an adult. Once we get there, we have to put forth the effort, and through the Word, talking with God, talking with people that are around us, that are mentors, so we can get that computer reset in our mind to realign us with what's really important, what really matters.
So true. So true, my brother.
It's good stuff, man. Good stuff. Well, got some more comments there, Mikey? Anybody? Because I got a couple of questions for Pastor JoJo.
Okay.
Awesome. You just by virtue of just talking with you, hearing about your past, you grew up in a pretty ethnically diverse high school.
Yes.
I think you were the real minority, right?
Shout out to Van Vleck High School.
I don't know what's
Van
up.
Vleck,
but-
Texas.
I don't know what's up, but it sounds like some brothers there.
It's pretty diverse, yes.
Yeah.
how did that type of like upbringing and that environment, I don't know, aid you in two questions, help you in your fathering, and help you in your pastoring?
Well, this is a pretty broad subject.
That's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up. But really, seriously, because
I have a lot of things I could say, I guess.
But the reason why I'm asking that question is because in our current climate,
yes,
important. That's why I brought it up.
And when I say broad, it wasn't an indictment. I mean, like there's so many ways I could go with that. Very diverse community. I even talked to a lot of my friends back home and. Like, did we have these issues like when we were
exactly.
kids? And, I mean, don't get me wrong. I know there's always been underlying systemic racism. I tell a buddy of mine a while back, I said, it's only white folks are saying there ain't no white privilege. That's a whole other subject.
I think I'm going to pause for a drink.
But next week, come back. We'll talk about that.
Look at that. I think we're going to pause for a drink on that one. I need some water.
I like to, think about stuff like that.
I'm just saying.
But yeah, really a diverse environment. And I think we'll bring it into the parenting or fatherhood issue. There's South Texas, man. There was definitely racism. I think progressively every generation, we're more observant of things, and there's a lot of diversity. I think more on the West Coast as far as maybe acceptance, but I think there was probably in my relationships there was a lot closer relationships that I had with people of color than anywhere else I've seen here. But there was racism that was in my family, and I'm using this because I'm kind of segueing into something and talking about that fatherhood aspect. I saw some things as a kid that really disgusted me growing up because I was never aware of it. Just like kids that experience racism on the side of skin color, the first time they hear the N-word, when they're exposed to it, and the parent has to sit down and say, "Okay, let's have this talk," So there's things that I saw that I didn't understand until I was old enough to start having all these hormones, and I noticed that most of my friends were, pretty diverse. And when I started experiencing that in my family, it actually made me rebel against not just the idea of racism, but because it was in some very close family members of mine, it actually pushed me towards probably having mostly friends of color. All of my friends growing up were primarily black or Mexican. So I guess I'm saying all that to say this. I experienced more acceptance sometimes in some of those families. I'd go next door to my Mexican friend's house growing up, and his mother would, make me homemade tortillas every morning, and just accepted me as one of the family. So there's things that I saw that I needed and I loved that I was lacking in my life, that I wasn't necessarily even finding in my own family or my own, culture, if you want to say, that I was finding in other cultures. Same way with one of my best friends that I ended up moving and supposed to go to school with. His parents treated me like one of their own kids. And, even the music I love I was turned on to by families that were some black families in our neighborhood. So I guess early on, in seeing that there was such and again, I know that fatherless issue, obviously, the statistics and the percentages are higher sometimes even in the black community as time has gone on. But in my experience, I found more acceptance in those families than I even did in my own at times. Or at least I took comfort in that. And I really never experienced anything negative. I was treated like a son with people of all color as a young man. And it could have been maybe because part of it is they knew my story and they knew the things that I'd been through and knew that they had to really show me some attention.
Awesome. So how's that help you? Because I know we got to land the plane pretty soon.
Yes.
But how does that help you in your fathering, being a awesome quality husband, and your pastoring?
Hey, and let's throw this on the top of it because we got a comment from Jordan to give me just about what advice to give to parents who are healing from their own past pain addictions to better parent their children.
Okay, well,
throw them together.
Say
again.
No. We're just going to have to go longer because this is good. Go. Right. What?
says, what advice can you give to new parents who are healing from their own past pains, addictions, to be better parents for their children? How do we set aside what we've gone through or are going through to be the best parents we can be for our kids?
Yeah, I don't know. One of those things, I think it's recognizing that it's a moment-by-moment thing. I think, when certain things come up, then deal with those things, but trying not to take a blanket approach, but having every moment be that moment. Like, for example, there are times that, both my wife and I have had things come up from our past, and it's a moment that I have to deal with. Not because my wife isn't like that and I'm not like that, but it's a moment of something that was not dealt with, obviously, or wouldn't have the effect that it has. So I've learned that it's a moment-by-moment thing. It's almost like an ever-present now.
Absolutely.
So for me, I've learned that I can't put it in a broad perspective, but I have to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. So for me, like, for example, again, going back to my kids, there's certain things that I knew that I could share with them in regard to things that I struggled with. And again, being as transparent as much as I could at the time, with explaining to them in such a way to where their young minds could get it, I just knew that was that assisted me a great deal. That I was not going to shy away from difficult things that I've been through in my past, from my sons or from those that are close to me, and it actually helped in the healing process. So in other words, I think I don't know if I'm honing it in enough. It's dealing with that circumstance on a moment-by-moment basis, recognizing that this thing is not going to last. It's a temporary thing.
So good, bro.
And so because it's a temporary thing, that you have an experience that you're not going to pass on to your child, because you are dealing with that. And because you're dealing with it, it is going to help you not transfer that thing to the next generation.
That's so good. I think doing there's one aspect of that where if we take a really brutally honest self-inventory and ask why we're doing the things we're doing or what motivates you to do what you do without condemnation, and that's the key thing. There's therefore no condemnation of those that are in Christ Jesus. So we tend to beat ourselves up about the choices we make, but if we do that self-inventory where we're really looking at our motives for doing what we did, and then choosing to change. So again, it's coming back to that being intentional. And recognizing that the mercy of God, man, when you wake up in the morning, mercy is waiting on you in the room. Yeah. It's there. The grace of God, understanding that God is patient with you. He understands your pain and all the things you've been through. And but take an inventory and start to attack that thing with these principles, and you'll see change happen.
That's right. That's right.
But as far as the other thing, Pastor Otto, with that, how does it translate now? I tend to, I think we talked about this before during, I don't remember what it was, but I just love the deeper that I go in the Word. It's, I'm not searching for profound mysteries at this point in my life. It's just I'm exploring the grace and love and the mercy of God like I never have before, because it's really the thing that matters more than anything. And when you think about the love of the Father and how He sees His creation and all the different shades and textures and sizes and everything that He's created, we know that there's no Jew nor Greek, bond or free, and that it covers every spectrum. It allows us to really, model and help shape our kids to be accepting one in that area. I know it's a whole other radio show to talk about, the crisis that we've had in our country. It seems like the media is moving on to other things now, but it shaped me to really, my kids, the things that I'm proud of now in them that I see that I never anticipated. One, just being friends with them as adults is kind of cool. I always were like the dad that, oh my God, my kids are going to grow up. But now I didn't realize how much I was going to enjoy them being adults and growing up and seeing them face challenges and that part of life. But one of the things that I really always tried to model before them is just the genuine love of God when it comes to accepting people. And that's one of the things I'm so proud of that I see in all their lives now, that they have such a heart towards people, and it's not based on any preconceived ideas of what society tries to tell them, but they base it out of the love of God. And so that is huge for me. Now that can go into a lot of different areas. We talk about race or whatever, but generally speaking, just that loving people comes back to the genuine love of God and how the Father sees us and how He embraces us. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace. That boldness to come into the Father's presence because we know that we're accepted by Him. That word boldness is amazing. If you look at it in the Greek, it means to come openly and frankly with no, I got these big words, I get my tongue tied up.
It's all right, brother. It's all right.
Without circumlocution, speaking in circles.
Right.
We tend to do that even sometimes when we pray. Well, Lord, I know I got to do this and that, instead of just saying, Father, oh, Daddy. And you do that. I see that in your life. But to understand that really, for us to model that to our kids, for them to come boldly into our presence, it's going to invite them into God's presence as well. And I think that's key when it comes to fatherhood, is that just being intentional again, being there with your kids, creating an open environment. I remember reading about pastors who, when they were in their study time, don't ever go interrupt Dad, and I thought, that is not the Father. That's not His heart, And so I said all that to say this, and this is something I can say, I know my oldest daughter would be okay to share it. I wrote her a letter when she was probably about 15 years old, because I recognized that my oldest, Kayla, she's probably still watching, I recognized that she didn't have a voice in my life. And I had kind of created that environment because she so wanted, I think, not necessarily to please me, but to be proud of her, that she, none of my kids were really ever trouble, except the middle one, you know what I'm saying? I'm just kidding. The middle one's just the bold one, we get the most attention sometimes. But all my daughters are amazing, and they all have that heart. But I recognized that my oldest didn't have a voice in my life. And I knew that was going to affect our relationship as adults, because there was one day that I was going to have to, you never stop being daddy, but there is that time when all of a sudden, like your boys, they're friends too. You can't just tell them, you never clean your room anymore. It ain't going to work. And so recognizing that, I wrote her this letter, and I told her that I wanted her to have a voice in my life. And it was based on that scripture, where I knew that because I felt like I didn't have a voice in my own father's life, I recognized that even I didn't have that comfort with my heavenly Father, that I felt like I had a voice where I could just go tell Him anything. And I wanted her to be able to be mad at me, to have a voice in my life as well. And I think that's huge. That's part of approaching the throne with boldness, which comes back to confidence in God's presence. So without trying to, again, we're just bringing it right back to the Word, but if we can understand that God has opened up His throne room to us, where it's a place where we're comfortable, we know that place. That's why there's no fear and judgment. Perfect love casts out fear, because that's a place we know. We spend time there. We can go into His presence anytime that we want. When we're confident in that, then it's going to shine through to our children as well. And if we feel like we have a voice where we can speak to Him in confidence, then our kids are going to be confident in their relationship with us as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Man, that was good. 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 I know we went a little bit over, but you know what? Sometimes we're just bees like that. We're going to do this. We got about a minute left, so we're going to. I have to go around my panel and just have us give some closing thoughts, and I'll land the plane. And gosh, man, this is a good one. This is really good. Khalid, what's up? Give us some closing thoughts, my friend.
Yeah, a lot of good topics tonight. A lot of good information. I really was drawn to what you said there regarding having more grace for your children. When as a parent, you can always you're driven to do what you feel is right. You're driven to raise children in a certain way because you want them to be successful in every aspect in life and God and family, everything. But sometimes, we can step back and remember and know the grace that we have in our Lord and how we feel that we know that God loves us in spite of ourselves while we're going through these channels in life. That's going to go hand in hand with that confidence as well, because when you find those moments of grace to give to your children, and you also instill that love and you build that confidence, they're building themselves up as well. Those are tools in their toolbox that they can carry on.
Amen.
And I think that's huge.
Good stuff.
Thanks for that.
Amen.
That's awesome. Mikey.
Yeah, I have to just agree with Khalid there too, because the grace, it's just such a, I don't know, it's deep. It's real deep,
Amen.
right? I mean, we talk about the mysteries. You said the mysteries. Well, they aren't numerology and all this other stuff, right? Or it's just the depth of God and the width and the breadth of God, right?
Amen.
I mean, it's His love that
Amen.
if we only knew it, if we truly knew it. I mean, lately, kind of look at, you look at what's heaven going to be like and stuff like that. And we talk about, well, all the conundrums of how do you know about this world, or what do you know? And I think when we get into that place and the depth of God's love overwhelms us, right? It is so much bigger than everything right here, that it just dwarfs everything to the point where the most heinous things just become okay, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just amazing, right? So it's something that we only can imagine, right? And so amen, Khalid.
Amazing grace.
Come on, Pastor JoJo, go.
I just want to say to Tim and Jordan, you guys are just an amazing couple. Still remember when I met Tim at one of the things that was here, actually. Give yourself the grace to grow, and everybody has a story, and your story is being written, and you get to decide what the end's going to be. I know a lot of people say fate or whatever, but you get to decide what the end's going to be. That doesn't mean things aren't going to come at you in life, but God is doing an amazing thing in your lives, and just continue to grow in that. Continue to be faithful to your church and plugged in, and you're going to see some amazing things happen with that new baby as well. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. You know what? I ain't got nothing. This is just really.
Well, you always got something.
Oh, but I'm telling you,
go,
man. I'm telling you, this is really, really, really good. I think what it was is that there were some wonderful expressions of hope that was given tonight. That no matter what the circumstances that's facing you, there's hope. There and there's practical application of receiving that hope.
Yes.
And walking in that hope. And so if you're listening. And I know that sometimes we're not crazy about calling, but if you're listening, know that you have hope. You've just heard a man that has gone through so many tragic and crazy, intense events in his life. I mean, actual murder at age 7, and some things. And as a result of people loving on him. As a result of him just saying, okay, God, here I am. He's a tremendous dad, tremendous pastor, tremendous husband because of the willingness to allow God to do some powerful things in his life. So there's hope. And you're hearing that from somebody who honestly, really at the time didn't have any hope. No. So we're here for you. Brothers and sisters, God bless you. Thank you for joining us. Facebook family, I really love you, and thank you for just being a part of what we're doing. And until next time, from Pastor Otto to Brother Khalid to Mike, and also to our guests who we're going to have on more often, Pastor JoJo, we say good night. We love you, praying for you. Have a great night. God bless.